Good evening, friends. It's Erickson, the president and founder of Playa Animal Welfare Services. I'm here to give you an update on our case. As many of you know, we filed our federal civil rights case this Thursday against the biggest offenders in the illegal raid of my home and rescue a year ago yesterday, actually, September 1st, 2023, when 15 armed police officers kicked down the door of our rescue, stormed into my bedroom at 5:30 in the morning with 15 armed police officers based on a false complaint from a woman in the neighborhood saying I don't take proper care of my cats. And then they spent the day illegally stealing all of our cats and basically everything I own. And then, months later, when I was finally able to sue the police for the return of our illegally seized cats and property, they did what they always do when you challenge them and go against them, which is to retaliate and prosecute me. So it wasn't until 10 months later, after the raid on my house and rescue, that they actually charged me. And not until I first sued them for the return of my illegally seized cats and property. So what I'm here to do right now is go over our federal lawsuit. It's 56 pages, filed August 29th, 2024 in the United States District Court for the District of Puerto Rico. So for those not familiar with the legal system, this is a federal case, meaning it will be heard in the federal courts in Puerto Rico, but they're part of the U.S. federal courts. So we get out of the more corrupt kangaroo courts that constitute the actual courts of Puerto Rico that are notorious for protecting illegal police conduct, covering it up, letting them go with no consequences. So we're in the right courts, and not only that, but I happen to have the best lawyer one could have hoped for, Bamily Lopez Ortiz. She's a genius. She's a warrior, a very compassionate and smart lady, and she's never lost a federal jury trial. So I'm deeply honored that she met with me and took my case. She found it as horrendous as we do, these actions of the police. And so now, just because so many people aren't prone to sit down and go through a 56-page legal complaint, I'm going to go through different sections of this on different videos. To get through the whole 56 pages in one video might be a bit much for most people to sit through. So today we're going to go over who are we suing and why are we suing them. So just based on page 1 here, this is the case caption up on the top. And I'll put this on the screen so you can see it better, is the case number. If you want to look it up, anyone can access the PACER court system online. That's where all the federal cases are accessible to the public for a very, very low cost. You don't have to pay big subscription fees. You just pay to download what you want. Otherwise, we also have this document completely uploaded, available free, no charge on our Linktree website with all the other documents from our case. So that link will be in the description of this video. So if you want to follow along, bring up the lawsuit. Most of what I'm going to do is be reading from the lawsuit itself, but I will give some explanations because there's some legal terminology that if you didn't go to law school, you're not familiar with the court filings and complaints and the terminology. I'll help clarify some of that. So first off, who am I suing? Okay, I'm suing Domingo Emanuele, the Attorney General of Puerto Rico and administrative head of the Puerto Rico Department of Justice in both his official capacity and his individual capacity, meaning that he is being sued personally as just a private citizen for his misconduct in violating my Fourth Amendment rights, but he is also being sued in his official capacity as the Attorney General of Puerto Rico. Next, Antonio Lopez Figueroa, Commissioner of the Puerto Rico Police Department, again, both in his official capacity as Police Commissioner of Puerto Rico and as an individual citizen. Next, Andres Fernandez Vera. You've probably heard his name before. He's the assistant district attorney, the prosecutor for the Judicial District of Mayagüez, and he is being sued in his individual capacity, meaning that he has acted outside of his scope as a prosecutor to violate my rights. Next, Jose Figueroa Andujar, captain of the Puerto Rico Police Department, assigned to the District of Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, in his individual capacity. And we'll get to it, but this is not his first time being sued in federal court for violating the civil rights, specifically the Fourth Amendment rights of innocent civilians. Next, Jose Rafael Ramos Quinones, agent of the Puerto Rico Police Department, assigned to the District of Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, in his individual capacity. You will recognize Ramos from many of our YouTube videos because he was the one primarily interacting with me during the day of the raid. He is the one that served me with the search warrant, among other things. David Caban Mendez, sergeant of the Puerto Rico Police Department, assigned to the District of Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, in his individual capacity. This guy is the one who signed off on the illegal warrant, knowing that when Ramos signed off on the illegal warrant, that it was bogus and fabricated. And the whole reason he signed the warrant was because in Puerto Rico, there's so much shenanigans and so much of this illegal and unconstitutional conduct by the police that not only does the police officer who's obtaining the warrant sign off on it, but his supervisor, in this case, the supervisor of Ramos, is David Caban Mendez, who's also had cases filed against him for violating the civil rights of civilians. But he signed off, stating that he essentially verified Ramos's investigation, verified the contents of the warrant are true and accurate, and he signed off on it, as did the prosecutor, Andres Fernandez Vera. After this, Adriana Luna, former Miss Teen Puerto Rico, now a veterinarian, being sued in her individual capacity for violating my civil rights. Dr. Marilyn Arce, a vet of 17 years, who primarily practices in the area of lab animal research. She works at the primate center in Puerto Rico where they breed monkeys to be experimented on throughout the world. That's their claim to fame. Dr. Arce's other claim to fame was being the veterinarian in charge of the Mayagüez Zoo when it lost its USDA permit for its horrendous conditions where hundreds of animals were suffering and dying due to ongoing neglect and abuse. Next, Solimar Crespo, individually. She's nobody, really. Never heard of the woman before. She's just a basic civilian who decided to stick her nose where it doesn't belong. She watched the Teleonce news stories, heard some gossip from the police, and decided that she was going to step up and take my cats from me, even though she's a full-time nurse with two small children, two boys, I believe maybe ages around 5 and 8, something like that, pregnant, taking night classes, and in charge of 55 horses that she's rescued. Admitted, first thing she says on the news, I have no experience with cats. I don't know what I'm doing. But Erica, I had to get them from her. Okay, we'll get into her later. Of course, next, Maria Gonzalez, the Airbnb owner from my neighborhood, who doesn't even live in my neighborhood in Añasco, who started all of this with her false allegations, false lawsuits, or false reports to the health department, false reports to the police, false reports to Teleonce. This woman has been harassing me nonstop since 2022, and at every turn she has lost. So now she's playing dirty, managed to get my cats taken from me based on false complaints to the police. So that's why she's being sued for violating my civil rights, because you can't do that. And finally, of course, Teleonce. if it weren't for Teleonce broadcasting all this unverified neighborhood gossip, taking the gossip to the police, fabricating documents which they then presented to the police, fabricated news stories where they show sick and dying cats from Rio Piedras, a neighborhood 95 miles away from my rescue in Añasco, as if those sick and dying cats were surrounding my home and neighborhood when they weren't. If it weren't for Teleonce fabricating all these lies, in addition to fabricating evidence that they presented to the police, none of this would have happened. So Teleonce is being sued as well. Those are our defendants. And next comes the complaint. So the complaint itself is where we have to legally state why we're suing these people. It's not the entire case. Obviously, we don't include every single detail of our case here, but this is where we have to kind of give a summary and explain the gist of the case and what's going on here. So I'll just read this. It's not that long. It's several pages. But then we'll stop after that for now. So, to the Honorable Court comes now plaintiff Erica Marie Erickson through undersigned legal counsel and respectfully states, alleges, and prays as follows. This is now the nature of the action and jurisdiction. On September 1st, 2023, in the dead of night, Captain Figueroa Andujar sent his infamous police squad to raid Erica Marie Erickson's home and animal rescue in Añasco, Puerto Rico, storming into her bedroom with 15 armed police officers and various private citizens empowered to act as government agents, as she slept alone in her home with her blind cat by her side. At the end of the day, after a chaotic, disorganized, controversial, and much publicized operation under the guise of enforcing the socially endearing Puerto Rico law for the welfare and protection of animals, Erica was paraded in front of the press, detained without legal cause, and her blind cat, Dulce, was lying dead on the side of the road, killed by the same police officers who asserted their authority in her purported well-being. This is a civil rights action against the defendants for committing acts under color of law that amounted to the deprivation of the plaintiff's rights secured by the Constitution and laws of the United States and Puerto Rico. Defendants deprived plaintiffs' constitutional rights to privacy, liberty, and property, and other rights, privileges, and immunities. Plaintiff's federal claim is instituted pursuant to 42 U.S. Code 1983 and 1988, and this court has jurisdiction over the action pursuant to the 4th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and 28 U.S.C. 1331 and 2201. Plaintiff requests compensatory and punitive damages, attorney's fees, and injunctive relief in the form of an order mandating the return of her illegally seized property, including the cats. Plaintiff also asserts libel and slander, defamation claims, as well as damages, torts, general claims, pursuant to Puerto Rico law. Accordingly, this court has supplemental jurisdiction over these claims that stem from the same set of operative facts as the federal action pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1367. Venue is properly with this court under 28 U.S.C. 1402b as the prosecution of the plaintiff and defendant's actions that are subject to this complaint occurred in the District of Puerto Rico. Now to the parties. Plaintiff is Erica Marie Erickson, an animal rescuer, who in May of 2021 moved to a rural neighborhood in Añasco, Puerto Rico, where she bought a home near the beach with a fenced-in yard and no neighbors that she thought would be perfect for her nonprofit animal rescue, Playa Animal Welfare Services Incorporated, hereinafter Playa Paws. Domingo Emanuele is and was at all times pertinent to this complaint, the Attorney General of Puerto Rico and the administrative head of the Puerto Rico Department of Justice. He is included in his official capacity for the prospective injunctive relief sought and in his individual capacity for his failure to supervise, correct, or his deliberate indifference to the unconstitutional practice of retaliatory prosecutions in the Judicial District of Mayagüez, which has become an ingrained prosecutor's policy, for his failure to supervise, correct, or his deliberate indifference to the Puerto Rico Department of Justice's prosecutor's practice to pursue criminal charges based on uncorroborated investigation of a private actor, which has become an ingrained prosecutor's policy, and for his failure to train the Puerto Rico Department of Justice's prosecutors and staff in the legal and practical application of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Ley para el Bienestar y la Protección de los Animales, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008, as amended, resulting in a chaotic, controversial, cruel, and injurious application of the law. 9. Antonio Lopez Figueroa is and was, at all times pertinent to this complaint, the Commissioner of the Puerto Rico Police Department and the Administrative Head of the Puerto Rico Police Department. He is included in his official capacity for the prospective injunctive relief sought and in his individual capacity for his failure to supervise, discipline, and control his subordinate, Captain Jose Figueroa Andujar, who has a history of civil rights violations and misbehavior, for his failure to supervise, correct, or his deliberate indifference to the reiterated unconstitutional practices of the Puerto Rico Police Department agents of the Mayagüez District in conducting unreasonable and unwarranted search and seizures, which has become an ingrained police policy, and for his failure to train the Puerto Rico Police Department agents in the legal, practical application of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008, as amended, resulting in a chaotic, controversial, cruel, and injurious application of the law. 10. Andres Fernandez Vera. As an assistant district attorney to the Mayagüez Judicial District, he is sued in his individual capacity for concocting this warrant used by the Puerto Rico police defendants to conduct an illegal and cruel search and seizure of plaintiff's property on September 1st, 2023. He participated in the government's representative. He participated as the government's representative in the judicial process filed by the plaintiff to challenge the seizure of her property. He then filed Puerto Rico Law 154 criminal charges as retribution for the plaintiff's reiterated assertions of her constitutional rights. 11. Jose Figueroa Andujar is a captain of the Puerto Rico Police Department assigned to the Mayagüez Judicial District. In 2009, when he was a sergeant in the same judicial district of Mayagüez, he was found individually liable by a Puerto Rico federal district jury that awarded $6.5 million in damages consequent in part to Figueroa Andujar's civil rights violations during the illegal search and seizure of the complainant's property, in which he had direct participation, the illegal taking of such property, the complainant's unlawful arrest and detention, the use of excessive force in their arrest, and for parading them in front of the press. The case is Vargas Torres v. Toledo Davila, etc., or et al. Case number 07CV2002. The jury in 2009 also awarded punitive damages against Figueroa Andujar after concluding that he had acted with reckless or callous indifference to the complainant's federally protected rights or was motivated by evil intent. Despite these findings by a federal jury that resulted in the government having to pay a substantial amount of the award attributable to Figueroa Andujar's actions, he has continued as a member of the Puerto Rico Police in the same judicial district and was even promoted to the rank of captain. 12. And Figueroa Andujar is sued in his individual capacity as the promoter, organizer, and direct participant in the September 1st, 2023 illegal and cruel search and seizure of plaintiff's property, the unconstitutional taking of her property, her unlawful detention and arrest, her unconstitutional subjection to a perp walk where she was paraded in front of the press, and malicious prosecution, and for setting in action a series of acts by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which he knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury. Figueroa Andujar acted with reckless or callous indifference to the plaintiff's federally protected rights or was motivated by evil intent. 13. Jose Rafael Ramos Quiñones is an agent of the Puerto Rico Police Department in the Judicial District of Mayaguez. He was assigned the complaint filed by Maria Gonzalez with co-defendant Figueroa Andujar and against the plaintiff. Ramos Quiñones did not conduct any investigation regarding the allegations of Gonzalez's complaint and instead proceeded to execute, direct, and participate in the September 1st, 2023 illegal and cruel search and seizure of plaintiff's property, the unconstitutional taking of her property, her unlawful detention and arrest, her unconstitutional subjection to a perp walk where she was paraded in front of the press, and malicious prosecution. Ramos Quiñones is sued in his individual capacity for his direct participation and for setting in motion a series of acts by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which he knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury. Ramos Quiñones acted with reckless or callous indifference to the plaintiff's federally protected rights or was motivated by evil intent. 14. David Caban Mendez is a sergeant of the Puerto Rico Police Department in the Judicial District of Mayaguez. At all times pertinent to the complaint, he was Ramos Quiñones' supervisor. He is sued in his individual capacity for failing to adequately supervise Ramos Quiñones' constitutionally injurious activities, for greenlighting the September 1st, 2023 operation, albeit he knew or should have known that there was no supporting investigation and the statements made by Maria Gonzalez were false and uncorroborated, and for setting in motion a series of acts by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which he knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury. 15. Adriana Luna was a first-year veterinarian with no shelter or rescue experience, no experience working with animal abuse investigations with law enforcement, and a self-described social media influencer and a media darling of the Puerto Rico press. She participated in the September 1st, 2023 raid operation at the behest of the state, which would be the Puerto Rico Police Department, the Health Department, and or the Puerto Rico Department of Justice, who delegated to her its authority to its authority to direct the raid and decide if the plaintiff and her rescue were in violation of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008 as amended, and direct direct the seizure of plaintiff's cats and property. Dr. Luna's participation in the September 1st, 2023 raid was willful, voluntary, and uncoerced, and despite her private motives, she still acted under the color of law. Dr. Luna is also sued for setting in motion a series of acts by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which she knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury on the plaintiff. Moreover, during the September 1st, 2023 raid, Dr. Luna stole the property of the plaintiff. 16. Marilyn Arce is a clinical veterinarian with the Caribbean Primate Research Center of the Medical Sciences campus of the University of Puerto Rico and an adjunct professor at Drexel University. She has no shelter or rescue experience and no experience in working on animal abuse investigations with law enforcement because her 17 years of experience are mostly in the context of laboratory animals. She participated in the September 1st, 2023 raid operation at the behest of the state, the Puerto Rico Police, Health Department, or Department of Justice, who delegated to her its authority to direct the raid and decide if the plaintiff and her rescue were in violation of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008 as amended, and direct the seizure of the plaintiff's cats and property. Dr. Arce's participation in the September 1st, 2023 raid was willful, voluntary, and uncoerced, and despite her private motives, she still acted under the color of law. Dr. Arce is also sued for setting in motion a series of acts by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which she knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury to the plaintiff. 17. Solimar Crespo Gonzalez is a nurse that operates a horse rescue in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. She participated in the September 1st, 2023 raid operation at the behest of the state, meaning the police, the health department, and/or the Puerto Rico Department of Justice, who delegated to her its authority to care for the plaintiff's cats in compliance with the tenets of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008 as amended. Under Crespo Gonzalez's custody and care, many of the plaintiff's cats died. Crespo Gonzalez's participation in the September 1st, 2023 raid was willful, voluntary, and uncoerced, and despite her private motives, she still acted under color of law. Crespo Gonzalez accepted the responsibility entrusted upon her by the government, even though she had no knowledge or experience to care for the plaintiff's cats, and she has retained for her own personal use the plaintiff's private property taken during the September 1st, 2023 operation. Crespo Gonzalez is also liable for libel and slander for the malicious publication of photographs taken by her during the raid, accompanied by her own commentaries and interpretations which have contributed to the plaintiff's public derision. 18. Maria Gonzalez is the owner of a property located in the plaintiff's neighborhood in Añasco, Puerto Rico. She has a history of filing false, unsubstantiated, and uncorroborated complaints against the plaintiff and her rescue with the courts, the police, the press, and social media. Her complaints are the genesis of all constitutional injuries suffered by the plaintiff. Gonzalez is sued for setting in motion a series of actions by others or refusing to terminate a series of acts by others which she knew or reasonably should have known would cause others to inflict constitutional injury, and for libel and slander of the plaintiff, subjecting her to public derision and putting her safety at risk and destroying her physical and emotional well-being. Because Gonzalez transmitted untruthful information to government officials empowered by the state, health department inspectors, the courts, the police, Police and the prosecutor to charge plaintiff, she is liable for the ensuing constitutionally injurious actions by the government officials. Gonzalez acted with reckless or callous indifference to the plaintiff's federally protected rights or was motivated by evil intent. 19. Teleonce is a Spanish-language television station in Puerto Rico that serves a large audience. It produces numerous programs, including breaking news broadcasts throughout the day and major news shows at noon, 4 o'clock p.m., 5 o'clock p.m., and 11 o'clock p.m. Teleonce also has an application that offers access to a wide selection of Puerto Rican television content, including breaking news. Teleonce produced and published during the month of August 2023 an uncorroborated investigative report by Melissa Correa, which falsely claimed that the plaintiff, a private citizen, was an animal abuser, subjecting her to public derision, putting her safety at risk, and destroying her physical and emotional well-being. Teleonce is liable to the plaintiff for libel and slander. Furthermore, Teleonce pressed the government to charge the plaintiff with violations of Puerto Rico's law for the welfare and protection of animals, Puerto Rico Law 154 of 2008 as amended, and willfully published the perp walks arranged by the Puerto Rico Police at their reporter's request. Because Teleonce transmitted uncorroborated and untruthful information to the government officials empowered by the state, the health department, inspectors, the courts, the police, and the prosecutor to charge the plaintiff, Teleonce is liable for the ensuing constitutionally injurious actions by the government officials. So we'll take a break here. This pretty much is the who's who of the case, describing why each of these individuals is being sued by me for violating my rights. And just to explain a little bit of this legal language, where it's talking about each of these people not only committing whatever actions they committed, but knowing that, for instance, Maria lying to the police, filing a false police report, making false statements to the news, she knew or should have known that making a false police report and accusing me of crimes in the media and filing false lawsuits against me and false complaints with the health department, she knew or should have known that when you file false allegations of a person, it could lead to that person being arrested, charged with crimes, fined. So that is how a private individual can ultimately be responsible for government officials violating that person's rights. And it's, of course, impossible to say for sure if any of these people knew what they were doing, because people can always claim ignorance. But that's no excuse, because it's a reasonable person standard. A reasonable person would know that these actions would have consequences that could down the road violate my civil rights. And that's exactly what happened. So we have all these people who've come together with this essentially conspiracy that will be discussed later in the case. This couldn't have happened with one person. Maria could keep making her complaints all day long. If Teleonce didn't put them on the news, we wouldn't be here. You know, the police who watched the news and just watched the news instead of investigating, just, okay, we saw on the news, that's our investigation, let's go kick down Erica's door. No, that's not how the law works. You have to do a proper investigation. You have to have probable cause, and probable cause does not come from the fake news stories or from the complaint of one woman in the neighborhood who has a history of making false allegations against me. And it's my Fourth Amendment right to make sure that such accusations are thoroughly investigated before you try to get a search warrant to kick down my door. So I think most of this is pretty straightforward so far. So we'll take a break and I'll be making future videos because we are only on page 9 of 56 right now and people only have so long of an attention span. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comments. I see everything that people write there. And watch our other YouTube videos, because all of the allegations contained in this lawsuit have corroborating videos. I filmed almost the entire day of the raid. Plus I had video surveillance on site. And on top of that, the best evidence of all of this has actually come out during my criminal prosecution, where these people have taken the stand and pretty much made my case for me. So it's kind of ironic, you know, the harder you try to lie about a person to take that person down, your lies are going to come back and bite you right in the butt. Happens all the time, and that's what's happening here. And we'll get into that in the next video. Thanks for watching.